Alrighty, welcome everybody. We are good to go.
So welcome to Supercharge your Salesforce experience with AI. We're going to just wait a minute or two to give people a chance to get in and before we start our exciting topic today. Welcome, and for those of you just joining, we're going to wait just another minute to give everybody a chance to get in, and thank you for taking time out of your day. Well, it's 12:02 Eastern Standard Time, and I think we'll get this party started. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm super excited to have you with us, and this is going to be an exciting topic. We do love fluid, interactive webinar experiences, so if you have anything you want to ask or agree with in the chat, feel free to use it. We can see it, and we'll try to answer any questions as we go along. But we will have a dedicated Q&A section at the end. And but please, if you hear anything we say that you agree with, or maybe your experience is different, we'd love to hear from you too, because I know one of the biggest things about webinars that I particularly enjoy is not only learning from the experts like we have today, but also interacting with my peers. So take advantage of that. And I am Sheridan Orr. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Language.io, but today I will be playing the role of Oprah to moderate this webinar with some really talented people that I think you'll enjoy hearing from. One of the biggest things that we wanted to do is not only talk about Language.io, but to talk really about how you can take advantage of AI in a Salesforce environment, and also to learn from an expert who's been doing it for quite a while. Mark Turner and I have been fortunate enough to work together in our past lives. And he currently is the VP of Revenue Operations at Demandbase, and quite an experienced and accomplished Salesforce administrator and strategist. So thank you so much for joining us today, Mark. I know you thought you got rid of me, but you did not.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And Chris Jacob, who is Language.io's Chief Product Officer and has been overseeing our integration with Salesforce since the dawn of Language.io, and really making sure that we have a seamless and integrated experience. But he's also going to talk about some of the things that we've learned from people in your shoes and how they've taken advantage not only of our product, but really learned about how to implement AI successfully. And so if you have any questions, these are two really great people to help you learn as you navigate. So without further ado, I'd love to just tell you a little bit about what Language.io does so you have the context. But really our passion and our mission is to deliver secure conversations in any language through the power of AI. So whether or not you're supporting chat on Service Cloud, we make it so that your customer service representatives can respond to customers in over 150 languages, and to make sure that they have business accurate, secure conversations, and to make sure that you have an end-to-end customer journey in any of those languages. So Mark, can you just tell us a little bit. I know I'm probably saying your praises and I probably shortchanged them a little bit. Can you tell us how long you've been working in a Salesforce environment? And
Yeah, so I've been familiar with Salesforce for about 16 years, owning a Salesforce system as a leader for probably the past 8 or so, all within a sales ops or revenue ops capacity. So it's been interesting to see how the tool has evolved over the years and how they're starting to think about incorporating AI, and how far they've come from their AI kind of introductions about 8 years ago, back in 2016 when they first started thinking about it.
thank you so much. And Chris, I mean, one of the things that I loved about having you on this webinar, and thank you for taking your time today, is you've had a deep relationship in integrating Language IO with Salesforce. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's such an important platform?
Yeah, happy to. So yeah, thanks for having me, everybody. Great to spend some time with you today. Salesforce has really built just truly a world-class support experience. And, we have a number of customers that have really been able to make really impressive improvements in the efficiency of delivering a support operation through the Salesforce platform. And we see a lot of customers, especially on the Salesforce side, who tend to be large organizations that have very distributed workforces that are operating in multiple regions. And so for us, we see a lot of customers that have built a lot of really impressive tooling on the Salesforce side using the platforms that they've created, the products that they've created, and then can need a little help from Language IO to help continue with the expansion and improving the efficiency of the support operations. So just really great partner to work with, really great set of development tools to build on top of, and just a really great experience that we can provide as a result of that deep partnership with Salesforce.
Thank you. All right, now let's get into the nitty gritty. Often, we collaborate really effectively with sales and marketing, Mark, but, customer support is also an important constituent inside of a Salesforce environment. How have you seen that done effectively, and what do you do to make that relationship thrive?
Yeah, customer support is a huge piece of our revenue impact at domain-based and at prior companies, right? Our biggest path to revenue is through our customers, and so we want to make sure they have a great experience when they interact with customer support, regardless of where they are in the world. And so we think about customer support as one of our main customers within the revenue operations org. We have regular touch points with them. They are in our Salesforce instance. We are trying to customize our Service Cloud to their needs and making sure they can do their jobs to the highest level as possible.
Great. How often do you meet with your CS leader?
Yeah, I meet with different levels of the CX organization at different periods. So VP of Support and I connect monthly. The Director of CX Operations and I meet a little more frequently, and our SVP of Customer Experience as on a bi-weekly cadence. So definitely top of mind throughout the year.
And if you're joining us, I'd love for you to just add to the chat, like how often do you meet with your CX leaders? Do you find anything that you think we should know? Chris, one of the advantages of actually hearing from vendors is that we get to work with Salesforce administrators across multiple organizations. Chris, you work with a lot of, Salesforce administrators and leaders in different companies, different sizes, different industries. How do you see the most effective teams collaborate across?
Yeah, there's, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that with a lot of our organizations, the most successful partnerships that we have are ones where there is a very strong line of communication, especially between the business owners and the Salesforce technical teams, right? Ones where the business owners are able to clearly describe why they're bringing in a solution like ours, and describe to the technical teams the solution that they're trying to implement, the objectives that they're trying to accomplish. When there's a really tight coupling of an understanding around what the business is asking for, right? As they're looking to use our solution to help expand their global support operations and, an understanding of the types of KPIs and metrics that are going to be tracked as part of that rollout. Just makes it really easy for the administrators to understand the best and most effective way to make sure that that team has access to the information that they need inside of the Salesforce environment, that they have all the data organized in the way that they need it. So really the more often that anyone on this call can have that understanding on why those tools are being brought in, the better, right? That's where we've really seen some pretty strong success with, expanding the operations and, getting the highest return on investment from our platform.
So now we're going to move to my favorite topic, which is AI. And I'm going to stay with you for a little bit, Mark. But, many of us have, had organizations or heard that organizations have mandates to adopt AI. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been experiencing at Demandbase and just how that's working?
Sure. Yeah, at Demandbase and some of our peers, we're hearing about OKRs aligned to adopting AI and understanding how AI use cases across different parts of the organization, specifically within products, within revenue operations, within marketing. Obviously, there's a lot of sales tools out there. There's customer support tools. And so each one of us at Demandbase has a mandate to go understand how to implement AI and level up our teams utilizing AI. And I know that this is the case as well for peers in the industry, and everybody's thinking about how to do more through AI and kind of keep the humans that they have today and get level them up and get more productive out of them.
So I know that you said that you've been working with AI inside of Salesforce for 8 years. That feels almost surreal to think about that. But what can you tell us a little bit about how those tools have evolved over that period?
Yeah, so when the Salesforce first came out with AI, it was more focused around Einstein and analytics and understanding natural language and data modeling. That has evolved, and then all of the peripheral tools around Salesforce have evolved. So products like Gong, Outreach, Language.io comes in and plays on top of Salesforce. And that's really where I think there's a lot of growth. These peripheral tools that my customers are using in their daily workflows are starting to launch AI. And so we need to make sure that the data that those tools are using is up to snuff, and it's putting out business-focused responses and aligned to our own internal messaging. And so we're not, taking all the data from the web. We're focusing our data within these tools and making sure that the AI is responding appropriately.
That's awesome. So when you think about AI, what have been some of your most successful implementations that you would like others on this call to consider?
Yeah, I think, Gong is a great one. So tools like Gong, where they're able to kind of take transactions or transcriptions of calls and kind of take some of the workload off of sales reps, the ever hated updating Salesforce mandates, and tools out there are starting to do that automatically. There's point solutions too that are purely built around AI, where they're creating summaries, they're creating executive level information dissemination across forecast risk, across product information from customer calls. So it's taking that workload off of a human, getting it into a system that can help organize the data, and then getting that data back out to the people who need it. And that's where we've seen the biggest success with AI today.
I know one of the things you and I used to joke about is if it wasn't in Salesforce, it didn't actually happen, and you would have to be ready to fire your very best rep for not updating to make sure. So maybe that means a lot of those great reps are saved, that their data is going straight into Salesforce. Anything that you're super excited about on the horizon? I know Language.io, but
yeah, I think how do we speak, specifically to Language.io, how do we provide support to multiple regions, right? We have a very centralized support team, but our customer base is broad and across the world. And so in order to provide the best experience to them, we either need to go hire people who speak all of these languages and have a more diverse workforce across the globe, or we can utilize technology and kind of create take our best customer support personnel and allow them to do their best work in any language.
That's great. Well, thanks for the plug. Hey, Chris, one of the things we often talk about is, there's so much opportunity with the AI, but what are some of the things that our listeners need to be thinking about to make sure that they're doing it successfully?
Yeah, I think it's very easy for everyone to get incredibly excited about the possibilities that AI delivers. And we see a lot of people just really running forward, and that's fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see. You want to see people moving in this direction and really trying to experiment, see what's possible. I think the earlier that somebody can ask the question for any AI solution that they're bringing in of what's the security model, what's the data privacy agreement, what's the data sharing arrangement that we have with this platform, the better, right? Especially for this type of audience on this call, it's really easy to create a really amazing technical demo and to get everyone really excited and hyped about what is going to be changed as a result of bringing in that solution. And the last thing you want is to get through this amazing presentation and then somebody asks that question and realize like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna be able to implement that based on our requirements here. So it's something that we take really seriously whenever we're investigating AI solutions and generative AI tools to bring into our platform. And really the more that we can do to help pull that conversation forward in the discussion, the better, so that we can have that awareness top of mind before anything gets into place, right? The second thing is, one thing to remember with these generative AI tools is that the first version of them that you ever interact with usually is not actually leveraging your own data, right? Like these models were trained on things that weren't necessarily your information. So the more that you can be doing to help make sure that your data is cataloged, tagged, right, appropriately organized so that you can then take that data and append it to these other tools, the better off you'll be, right? Because that's just where you're going to get the most return on that investment, right? You get the first 80, 90% really quickly with how fast these tools have grown. And then that last 10% is really up to you. So the more that you can be doing right now to ask yourself that question around what do we have, what's available, what's at my fingertips, what might be harder to get at, the better off you'll be.
That's great. And then I often hear our CEO, Heather Shoemaker, talk about that you want to have a human involved, at least in the initial implementation, especially when you're having conversations directly with your customer. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we've all heard, I think most people, well, at least I've heard a lot of these stories. I don't know how far they've gotten to everyone on this call, but for those of you who haven't heard it, right, again, really amazing things that are going on with AI and lots of really great success stories about agent efficiency or either around operational efficiency that's achieved with these tools. But there's lots of things that could be scary to organizations as well, right, as you're trying to pitch these solutions internally. One thing that we've seen is that it's a lot easier to pitch these solutions and to get buy-in from the organization when you have this concept of having a human in the loop, at least for the first iteration. So for us, as we're exploring chatbot solutions, some ways that we can help apply our multilingual conversation technology to a chatbot use case, we're really interested in looking into and deploying versions that will allow for a support agent perhaps to validate the response before it goes out, a more co-pilot type activity. If you can roll out those items that have at least some layer of verification before the chatbot response goes out, we've seen generally more appetite and buy-in from organizations around that process rather than just going full steam ahead into an unmonitored chatbot situation where then you get stories like the chatbot potentially making up policies that don't exist and then the company needing to go back on those. So we'll all get to that point, right? We're all moving in that direction, but the more that you can do to stepwise say, here's the milestones that we'll hit, and then we'll have a human first review these items, the more likely I think you are to be able to get buy-in from your organization as you launch these initiatives.
So if I can summarize, you're saying we need to make sure that we're focusing on security and asking the right questions about the security. Another one I often hear you talk about is the ease of integration, and then making sure your model is adapted to your data, and then having kind of a human, I guess, training wheels initially when you're making sure. So those are really great points, Chris. Mark, I know that you have done, especially with Gong, the integration. Any challenges that you would say that we need to stay ahead of or be thinking about?
I think similar to Chris's point, making sure you're aligned with your own internal policies, right? AI is changing every day. Policies are changing every day. You don't want to get 90% down the line of a purchase cycle and then have privacy or security come in and are not aligned or not bought into your use case and the security of the products you're buying. The other challenge is adoption and making sure that the teams you're supporting are aligned to the the AI use case, and they're not seeing it as a job replacement, they're seeing it as a job enhancement. And because otherwise you're pushing AI on your own agenda without getting them bought in, and without adoption, there's not much behind any product you buy.
I love that. We just got back from a teleconference, our telco conference, and that was one of the things that a lot of participants were saying is they were having resistance to AI because employees were like, hey, I'm just going to help train a model that's going to take my job. But the other side of it is once you learn to work with AI and these tools, you're actually a much more marketable person. So those are really great points. When you've done your early implementations, how long do you think it takes for an organization to really start to reap the benefits? I guess there's like an early stage, but then.
Yeah, so in our experience, it depends on the tool and the adoption of the tool. So we have some tools that are focused on a team of 5 or 6, and we've seen the impact almost day 2 from a tool like that. We have tools that our entire sales org, so we have about 150 people that we're trying to adopt these tools. The pickup is slow, but once you can expose it and you start to show it in all hands calls, you start to show the impact in highlighting Slack messages, the wave gets there. And so it is around communication internally, celebrating the wins with it, using an AI tool, and showing how it's helping people do their jobs better. So again, depending on the tool, you may be talking a day or you're talking a month. But I think from my experience, the impact is fairly quickly. We're not talking about a 6 month to a year impact.
And we love projects like that. And Chris, I know your team has done a ton of work to make the Language IO integration with Salesforce that can happen even as easily in a day. But I'd love to know from your experience working with many leaders and many types of organizations, what should we be thinking about as we implement AI?
Yeah, exactly. I think I echo a lot of what Mark said, right? Which is that I'll tell you from our perspective, we always try to make the initial implementation as seamless as possible. So similar to what Mark is talking about, right? The Language IO solution can be installed and running inside of an environment, deployed to agents within a matter of 24 hours, right? So really quick turnaround as far as being able to get things there. And then the next question as far as, okay, well, how do we increase adoption around this? That's really where I think the more that you can do to reframe the conversation around the outcome of that solution, right? It's not necessarily in terms of like, well, how many, there's metrics around this. You could look at that pretty simple in a Salesforce environment, like how many agents have access to this solution or how many users do we have onboarded on things. But the more that you can reframe the conversation around the KPIs that the business cares about, how did we reduce handling time for the average conversation? How did we, improve the customer satisfaction metrics, the CSAT scores that were coming back? That's where you really start to see these adoption components come back, and where we've seen, a lot of our customers have become heroes of their organization because they've really transformed those tools that they purchased from us into those success stories that then, drove real tangible change in the organization.
That's wonderful. So Mark, what are the things that you're most excited about AI doing potentially inside of a Salesforce environment? And you could dream a little bit here too.
I think it's acting, from my world, acting as an analyst, an automated analyst, automated risk flag, helping us forecast better, helping us understand the state of the business. I love seeing these things where you can start asking it questions as if it is a real-time human analyst, but also the efficiencies or the accuracies it gains. As we think about our support team, how do we scale them up? Our customer success org, and how do we ensure that our customers are getting to value? We're starting to utilize some AI in that world, and so it's really unlimited possibilities, I think, is kind of the dream world. And every day you kind of come across a solution, and it's all about prioritizing the solution for the biggest impact in the org.
Where are you doing, besides Salesforce, Ben, where are you doing a lot of your research to find out kind of what's on the horizon on other parts of Salesforce?
Different newsletters. So there's a daily or weekly newsletter around AI in the world, and it's got snippets of how do you utilize it for go-to-market tech stacks, how do you utilize it for other playbooks, how do you utilize it for data analysis, and again, similar to Chris's point earlier, you got to be careful that you're not uploading your entire code base to ChatGPT and letting it out into the world. But there are tools that will take your own data, post it on your own kind of data platform, and allow you to manipulate it and ask it questions.
Have you found anything that helps with reps and their happy years? This is definitely going to close in this quarter.
Yeah. So we're partnering with a tool called Momentum, and this is one that we're really excited about because it sits and it listens to all the call transcriptions or analyzes call transcriptions and kind of gives you a sense of forecast risk. And so if the customer is saying they don't have the budget or their champion has left and the rep isn't noting that in their deal notes, now we, without having to listen to every call, get these tidbits. And you can train it to pick up on risks, renewal risks, deal risks. So it's pretty exciting and kind of gives us a little more focused visibility into our forecast, and we can start to poke and ask questions without having to listen to every call.
I love that because I have spent my time on the gong jukebox before. Chris, we're going to move to some really specific questions about Language IO because we are doing some really cool stuff in the Salesforce environment. So can you tell us how we're filling in a gap on what is in Salesforce today, and why did we develop Language IO to start with?
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy to give a quick rundown there. So like I said, a lot of our customers are large organizations that have distributed global support teams, right? And what we found when we were doing the initial market research and when Heather, our CEO, was launching the company over 10 years ago, what we found was that there was a real need to expand those support operations, that expanding support operations is really tough, right? Especially when you're talking about, it's just tough to do in general, right? It involves hiring, management structures, places for those people to sit and, be at their desk when they're receiving calls or chat messages. So it's already hard. But then when you add in the fact that you're trying to expand into new territories and sell your product in new regions that your support team doesn't speak the language, now you're talking about training up a new team of users who speak a different language from your existing team and trying to give them all the nuance of your product categories and your jargon and how you should be having that conversation with customers, right? So the reason that Language IO fits into that process is because we make it so that a team can leverage their existing support operations, their existing support contact centers, expand into new territories, cover new languages, handle overflow from territories where users don't speak the language, really just dramatically simplify the overhead and the management of a support operations contact center for what is already a really difficult thing to do. It's one of the things that Salesforce offers some great tools for conversations out of the box, right? They have the Service Cloud platform does a really great job of connecting companies to customers, and we help fill in the gap around making sure that even when an agent is speaking a different language from the customer, that there's a really smooth and seamless support experience that can happen between those two parties.
Well, I love it. And it's French Open time. I'm a tennis player. So can you give us the example of the Rafa example?
Yeah. This is a real example from a customer who came into there's obviously the concept of giving the agents the interface so they can have this multilingual conversation, but there's real trouble when it comes to actually properly interpreting the jargon that gets used in a conversation. So everyone on this call, your company has your own sets of terminology that you use. So we had a customer reach out to us that I don't have I'll give you the translation of what this would have looked like if it came out. This was a real chat that came through with various misspellings and some slang terms in there. They used RG as a slang term for Roland Garros, right? They used Rafa as a slang term for Rafael Nadal. If you had run that directly through Google Translate, you would have ended up with the translation of, I've carried out the promotion for the winner of the RG with Rafa, and you have not harmed me with the last free, right? So if I'm a support agent, I have no idea what to do with that, right? So the way that it comes out of the Language IO solution is I've carried out the promotion for the winner of the French Open with Rafael Nadal, and you have not given me the last free code is what the customer was trying to say. So a much clearer translation that's provided based on the technology that we offer on the back end, it helps, our smart model selection process helps to look across different models, different translation engines to find the best one for that particular translation. Our glossary and position process helps to make sure that those pieces of terminology and slang get translated appropriately. So we provide both a great interface that agents can use to have that conversation with customers in a multilingual context, and also translation technology that helps to dramatically improve the quality of the translation that the agent and the customer receive.
I love that story, and you already kind of started me on story. So any other exciting use cases that you've seen at Language I/O that you'd love to share with our audience, just to see if it applies to what they're doing today? I love that one because I believe that was a betting platform, correct?
Yeah, sports betting company. Yeah,
definitely want your money when you win on Rafa Nadal. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't go so well this time for him. It seems like he might be back next year. We'll find out. It seems like he wants another shot at it. So, no good. So, yeah, as far as other success stories that we've seen, that's one example of one industry, right? But like I mentioned, every user on this call, every person on this call has their own specific sets of terminology, right? So we've seen some really great success with companies setting up these translation mechanisms, right? One example that I like to talk through is that you'd assume that because this is a translation process, as great as machine translation is, it's still not a human, right? It's still not a human sitting there that's fluent in both languages, translating both items. So you'd expect that you'd see some potential, decrease in customer satisfaction scores between, a translated conversation and a native conversation. We actually have a couple of customers that have told us that customer satisfaction scores for translated conversations are even higher than they are for native speakers speaking to one another, right? And that's impressive, right? Because like I said, you'd assume the opposite. You'd assume that, this translation that's happening might be impacting the quality of the understanding between both users. But our hypothesis is that many times these users who are tending to be, in countries that may not have native language support, that are sometimes forced to speak English or another common language between that user and the support agent, right? They're just so happy to be able to speak their native language that they're able to get the support that they need with accurate translations, with no loss of context between the customer and the support agent, that they oftentimes will report even higher levels of satisfaction with the support outcome than they would if they were native speakers speaking to one another. So just really great success that we've seen, that goes against intuition that you might expect, given the technology at play here, but just some really great stories we have from a lot of our customers around success in this space.
And I know all of us have read notes that reps and agents put in Salesforce and try to decipher what that means. One of the great things is we can almost make that easier, like with source optimization or translation optimization. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we offer a couple of different items. So then that's great that we see customers that are having such a fantastic translation experience, but it doesn't mean we've stopped there, right? We're continuously evolving. We're looking for new models that we can put into our translation management system, or into our translation system, right? Our translation engines that we manage. And so, for example, we've incorporated large language models into that technology, right? So we now integrate with a couple of large language models that give us the capability to run the translation through that system. We also now offer the capability for a translation optimization to occur. So one thing that you might note, I always talk about this with myself, right? Like when I'm typing content back and forth, I'm oftentimes just typing out quickly on a keyboard or on a phone screen, right? And I'm not necessarily paying attention to grammar or punctuation or any misspellings or typos that might happen before I fire off that message. And that's really hard for a machine translation engine to deal with. It's garbage in, garbage out. So we offer some capabilities using large language models to provide a pre-processing routine that's able to help correct for some of those common errors, those common mistakes that occur, and help improve the overall quality of the translation that the customer ends up seeing from that output. So yeah, lots of ways that we're leveraging new technologies to help continue down this path of further improving the translation quality and the experience for the customer and the agent, and lots of ways that it can help to avoid some of those just human errors that make their way into the process.
I love that. And you also talked about when are we a good fit for someone? And, obviously if you're already serving multiple markets like Mark is doing, it really helps you scale your team into those markets and support native languages. Are there other types of customers or use cases that if our listeners have that we would be a good fit for them to start thinking about?
Yeah, my favorite types of customers are the ones that are growing so fast, right, and are selling into new territories. So when let's say that you started selling into your, a whole market, right, where you're kind of based out of it, and you understand it, right, and then suddenly somebody comes to you from within the organization and says, we need to go to another country, right, and you're getting a lot of sales, a lot of traction there. You're already running marketing campaigns in that space. Like orders are coming in, you've got a sales team on the ground here. Then the question becomes, how do we make those customers successful, right? That's when we're a perfect fit for that type of organization that's really growing quickly, doesn't have enough time to hire people and train them, and doesn't have the, you need customers that you need to support today. So those are the types of discussions that I always love having, and dropping our solution in there to help make sure that you can grow really quickly without any compromise in the customer experience.
I love it. Mark, I'm going to get to you in a minute, but I got one more question for Chris. One of the things that I'm super excited about is, different types of translations, not just chatbots, but if you want to be successful with a platform like Language.io, what do you have to have already in place? Like what type of content to train the model, et cetera?
Yeah. Knowledge-based content is really valuable, right? This is something that I think a lot of people have inside of their Salesforce environment, right? These knowledge articles that are already human translated usually, especially if you're already operating in multiple territories, right? You've got a really rich data set that you could use that would help figure out how to better serve customers in that territory, how to get translations to be more accurate to your specific terminology and jargon, right? We've got a great set of content that describes the policies and procedures in each of those regions that are already in language. So that's gold for you, right? If you have that content, then that's really a great starting point as far as, how to make sure that you can adapt any large language model solution, generative AI tool to your specific tone of voice, to your own language. So yeah, the more time that you can spend really introspecting that content and understanding if it's ready for consumption by a third-party generative AI solution, the better off you'll be, because that's really just a truly great training and adaptation data set for you to leverage.
I love it. So you've already put this work into documentation. Use it now to train your model. Mark, one of the things that I loved about working with you is you were always on the forefront, and we're such a good advocate inside of the organization for new things and new approaches. When you find these really cool things like Language.io or things in your newsletters or Salesforce Then, what are some practices that we can use to help advocate? Like, we found it, it's really cool, we should try this.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes back to the business case, and what is the tool going to cost us? What do we think it's going to save? Or specifically around AI, there's a human component, right? So you're using AI to replace a lot of or improve a lot of human practices, and so as you scale your teams, there's going to be a human cost to it. And when does the AI cost outweigh the human cost? And that's kind of the argument that I've been able to use, is that by implementing a tool for X amount of dollars, we no longer have to go hire, this number of heads, and we can help our current team perform at this level by utilizing these tools. Or the systems can do it themselves, right? We don't need additional human capital to go do this next level of systems maturity within our organization. So it all does kind of start with the business case. Multiple times, or oftentimes nowadays, the CFO is the main signer, the main approver in deals. Even if it's a revenue focused tool, the CFO holds the budget, and they're going to come back to what is the business case, regardless of how cool the tool is or how awesome it's going to look. If it doesn't save money or have an ROI on it, they're gonna say no.
That's such a good point. I miss the heady days of tech where you just bought stuff and just figured out how it worked later. We don't do that anymore.
Security approved it, you just bought it and implemented it.
Let's just
now there's budgets, which is fun.
Well, great. If you have, before we kind of wind down, I'd love to see if you have any questions in our audience. What do you want to talk about? What have you been thinking about? And what would you like to learn from our experts? And while you're typing those out without any grammatical errors and talking about Rafa and Roland Garros, I'd love to invite you all. So I have begged Chris to give us just a quick demo after we kind of wrap up with the questions, so he can just show you what Language IO looks like in the Salesforce environment. And then Chris, where would our audience find out more about Language IO in the meantime?
Yeah, you can find out more about it. So I'll show you just a quick demonstration here of what our integration looks like, what our application looks like, which you can find on the Salesforce App Exchange. So we'll share out some details around the integration that you can click on and go to that URL. So that's one place you can learn more about the specific Salesforce components that we offer. Then, of course, for more of our story and how we've helped organizations with their multilingual support operations, right, with their multilingual conversations, you can go to our website at languageio.com.
Love that. One of the questions that we've gotten is, we've all read the headlines about like the rogue bot writing poems about how bad the delivery service is for one company, or creating its own policy on bereavement. But what are some of the ethical concerns that you've been thinking about, Chris, in AI?
Yeah, so just first around that, as far as like the ethical concerns, right? So specifically, let me address some of the things that it's making up first, right? So the way we look at it, what I was referencing with that knowledge-based content that you have, right? That's really your first line of defense against some of those things that the chatbot is going to make up. As I mentioned before, and I'm sure many people on this call have experimented with, it's going to try to make things up because it doesn't necessarily have the context of your specific data set in mind when it's trying to make these things up. What you need to remember is that the way these models are programmed is that they're trying really hard to give a response to every single question that's asked of them, right? So they're going to go find whatever information they can find that seems like the most likely response, and they're going to generate that. The more data that you can give it from your own environment, the more adaptation that you can do specific to your data sets, the better off you're going to be, because you'll be giving additional weight to your particular information to help avoid some of those, troublesome scenarios we've heard from organizations and all those news headlines that I'm sure we're reading day in and day out, right? And then from an ethical consideration with these items, right, it's really making sure that we want the experience to be just additional. We want it to be beneficial for both the customer and for the support agent, right? In a lot of ways, we want this to be something that everyone's learning from the solution, right? That there's correct information getting passed back and forth, that the information is not something that's going to lead the customer down the wrong path here, right? And, give them false information that gets their hopes up, right? So that's really something that we think about a lot as far as how we're developing these solutions, of how can we dramatically increase the likelihood the model is going to give you the correct answer and avoid some of these pitfalls around the development. And also to make sure, I think Mark mentioned this earlier, that we want to make sure that it enhances both the customer and the support agent's experience, that there's always going to be a need for some sort of a live human support in this process, right? Chatbots are fantastic. They can do a lot of things, but at some point there's going to need to be correction that's made, right? Something else that's there. So the more that we can bring support agents into this discussion and make sure that they're part of this process and that these tools enhance their workflow, the better, right? And that's something that we're always looking for here, is to make sure that these components can help increase efficiency for those that are using it, and for both the organization and for the support agents that are interfacing with these tools.
Love it. And I don't think we have that many other questions, but Mark, what would be your parting words to our people who are in the same shoes as you? Like, doesn't even have to be about this topic. What?
I think, make sure to, when you're thinking about AI, democratize it, allow people to play around with it. You never know where the nugget of genius is going to come from, whether it's the lowest level in the company or the CEO. So as you task people to think about AI and explore different tools, they'll find use cases to scale themselves and their peers.
I love it. So, and what's the coolest thing you've done with ChatGPT?
Oh, I don't know. I'm in it almost every day. We're lucky enough that we have an enterprise license, so we can really use it for our own data. And we've started to actually load up just random data sets and ask it questions around product configurations and what our customers are seeing success with. So
that is
Yeah.
Super exciting. So, Chris, any parting words before we get you to go into a quick demo? And Mark, we'll let you go during the demo unless you're dying to see it again.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for your time, and it was good to see you. And I hope the rest of you will stick around because it really is a cool demo, and you can get to see how easy it operates in a Salesforce environment. And in case you want to advocate for this or any kind of other similar tool in your organization. So Chris, take it away.
Yeah, I may actually, I was just looking here. I actually, Gene, I don't know if you can help me out here. I don't know if I have the screen presenter controls available to me in this, so I don't know if you can turn those on in the background here while we wait to see if there's any other questions that come through.
I just switched over to a presenter, so you're all set, Chris.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, good. Let me go ahead and just make sure that I'm sharing the right screen here. So I just wanted to show everyone just a quick rundown of what Language IO does in the background here, right? And some of the ways that we can apply some of these generative AI tools, machine translation, right, to support workflows and what it looks like here. So I'll just go to a quick demo environment that I have set up, and I'll walk you through just a brief example of what this looks like, both from a translation quality perspective and from the perspective of what an agent would see throughout the course of the conversation. So on the right-hand side, I am a customer interfacing with.
I can't see your screen.
Oh, there we go. I did not actually click the screen button. Give me a second. I think everyone will be able to see the Salesforce environment at this point, correct?
Yes,
okay, cool.
we can.
Thank you. All right, good. So on the right-hand side, I am a customer who speaks Spanish, and on the left-hand side, I am a user who's a support agent user who speaks English. So what we're going to do is initiate a conversation between the support agent over here on the right-hand side and the customer, right? So I, as a customer, am going to launch this. This is all going through, as you can see, the standard Salesforce Service Cloud environment. I will go ahead and accept this message here. And this will initiate the conversation between the customer and the support agent in the background. So right off the bat, for those of you that are familiar with the Salesforce interface, right, this translation tab here, this is the Language IO application. You'll notice that it looks very similar to the default conversation tab that exists inside of the Salesforce Service Cloud chat components, right? And the reason for that is we want this to be a very seamless transition for an agent to be able to work with these multilingual translations in an interface that's really familiar for them. So as users deploy this, they don't need to do a bunch of retraining of the support agents in order to get used to a new interface. It's really dropped directly into where they already are working today. They click over right next to it, and it's something that's immediately familiar to them. So I brought up this example earlier of a bad translation that came out of the default machine translation engine. So again, Sheridan brought this up earlier. This is a real translation that came back from a sports betting company that works with Language IO. There's a couple of issues with this, right? Ganafor is a misspelling of ganador, which is winner in Spanish. RG is a slang term for Roland Garros. Rafa would be a slang term for Rafael Nadal. And I read this out to everybody as we were going through the call here, but just to read it again, if you ran this through the default machine translation engine of Google Translate, you get this translation of, I've carried out the promotion for the winner of the RG with Rafa, and you have not harmed me with the last free. All right, so obviously a very difficult translation for anybody to make sense of, right? Especially a support agent who there in the moment is trying to solve that customer's issue. Language IO on the back end offers up a couple of different components to help improve the translation quality. So the ones that you'll see here are smart model selection that's going to go into a list of machine translation engines, both neural machine translation engines and large language models. And it's going to find the best translation engine for that particular translation request, as well as our glossary and position technology that's going to help improve the quality of the translation that comes out. So when I type this message into the chat window here, which by the way, just to point out, as a customer, I've already seen a Spanish autoresponder here. As an agent, I've already seen an English responder here. What we've done is we've picked up on the customer's language preference from the browser. So right off the bat, this conversation can get started without needing to do any sort of intake form or anything to help ask the customer what language do you want to be speaking. We can just immediately start delivering messages in that customer's language. So it's a very smooth and seamless experience for them. So when I, as the user, now type in this question that I have, you'll see that very quickly a translation is going to be returned in the Language IO interface. and you can see the improved quality of the translation that comes out here, right? I've redeemed the promo code for the winner of the French Open with Rafael Nadal, and you have not given me the last free code in this case, was what the customer was trying to say. So you can see right off the bat how this is a really simple, straightforward experience for the agent, how when the customer asks a question, the user is able to get a translation that is able to be understood, right? And now I, as a support agent, can begin taking action on this conversation. So there's lots of controls in here that we can go back and forth on, show you more details on it. We've given a lot of specific details in here around how Language IO can help provide a secondary translation. So as you mentioned, as you see here, we can try, let's say that for some reason there was an issue with this translation, we can retranslate the engine using an alternative MT engine, machine translation engine. So we can click this button, get a second opinion to be able to see if there's a different translation that might get returned. So you can see that button got clicked and now we received a secondary opinion, right? If the user changes languages at any point throughout the conversation, we can redetect the user's language so the agent can very quickly adapt to any changes in language. You can see the original content that's been generated up until this point. You can see both the original content that the user sent out and that the agent responded with, right, or that the retranslations, right? So lots of information that's in here, lots of little interface elements that help to adapt to the reality of having a multilingual conversation that really help with the fluidity of the support experience. Last thing I'll show you here, there's lots that we could spend time in here, and I think I could go back and forth on this, but I mentioned how we're using large language models to help improve translation quality. So let's say here that I'm a support agent, and I say I am super happy to help, right? Let's say that we've got a person who's really happy to help out this customer, and they're just typing things quickly, and they put a quick typo in there. They say, can I have your email address? One of the hardest things for machine translation engines to adapt to is bad input content, right? But this is something where large language models, generative AI can really shine. So what we've done is we've created this routine in the background that's able to take some of these things that may not be completely necessary for the quality or the understanding of the translation, and correct for things like misspellings. We're able to really quickly, with this translation optimization feature, take this source content and before it gets sent into any translation process, correct for some of the errors that might have happened in that initial output. So in this case, the translation was responded to, or was adapted to say, I'm here to help. What's your email address, right? You can see it corrected some of the specific terminology that might have been difficult for an engine to interpret. It took some of that typo content and fixed it so when it went through the machine translation output here, it had a much higher likelihood of returning a successful translation. And if it doesn't for any reason, we give feedback channels. So a customer here can click this button to say, hey, something might have gone wrong. We log that in the background, which then feeds into additional learning for our engines to, in the future, adapt to that content later on. If I can click this button here, there we go. And also it gives the agent an immediate in real time note that, hey, somebody has clicked a flag button here, which implies that they may not have liked that translation. So the support agent can go and investigate what might have happened there, try to see if that was an important message, rephrase the question, rephrase the content, and just make sure that our primary goal is always to make sure that the customer and the agent both have a good experience. So we built these controls in here to help make sure that even given all the potential pitfalls of using translation in a conversation, that we have ways that the agent and the customer can both take action on it right away. So lots more that I could show here. If anyone's interested, of course, you can reach out to us, contact us. There will be information shared after this. But yeah, just wanted to show you a couple quick rundowns of how a conversation solution works. For context, we have tools that integrate with Salesforce Chat, Salesforce Case, and Salesforce Knowledge Articles, and Salesforce Messaging as well, right? So we've got a pretty wide suite of tools that apply. So if you have any questions or considerations around how we can help adapt to your environment, we are happy to have that conversation and see what we can offer.
That was great, live demo. Quick question though, how many languages do we do this in?
Over 150.
And do we need English at all to, like, could it be French to Italian?
Yeah, it can. It can be any combination of those language pairs to one another without requiring English as an intermediary translation, which helps improve the output quality.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us, and thank you, Chris. That was really great. I have agita at thinking about doing live demos. So congratulations to you. And thank you all for joining us. I hope you have a great day. And if you need anything from us or you'd like to get in touch with Mark, you can reach out to me. It's Sheridan, SHERIDAN .orr at Language.io. And we look forward to seeing you. And thank you so much. And thank you, Salesforce Ben.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.